Welcome to UFHL Now! A close-up look at the ultimate fantasy hockey league. The most realistic fantasy gameplay. High stakes. High reward. Here's your host, the owner of Duckman's domination in the UFHL, and the mighty Mallards of the UFAHL, Dean Millard.
Hello there, and welcome to another edition of UFHL Now, the 10th edition, actually. What a milestone that we have reached here on this program. This is, of course, on the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. You can find more information about UFSN at UFS Network on Twitter. You can email UFSN at UFFsports.com, and you can find me on Twitter at Ducks Domination. Crazy show, crazy week. We had a change in the standings with the top 10. So some Florida Panthers absolutely went off this week, much like the Rangers did a few weeks ago when they were thumping the Flyers, led by Mika Zibanejad. We'll have our top 5 shutout leaders this week. We will take a look at the rest of the hot players, and Larry Fisher, of course, our UFHL Insider, will join us. And one of the things that we will be talking about is possibly a traditional draft in the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League. Lots of things going on within the entire platform, not just hockey, but lots of things that will certainly impact hockey, as it will with a whole other sports. But I think a lot of people in this platform are about to be very, very happy with some proposed changes in the next little while. So that is what we have going for you on the show today. So without further ado, let's get things going.
You're watching the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network, UFSN, your one-stop fantasy shop. Get in touch on Twitter at UFS Network. Email us, UFSN at UFFsports.com.
All right, we always like to take a look at the top performers in the last 7 days, so between Fridays for this show. And, of course, I mentioned the Florida Panthers earlier. They had a great week, as you can see, because all 3 of these players are on the Florida Panthers. Jonathan Huberdeau, big man for the Royals, keeping them fully entrenched when it comes to the top 10 and the entire playoff push in the UFHL. The Royals get production from Huberdeau in the form of not just points, but they get a ton of shots on goal. They get the bonus points for the power play points, and, of course, a few hits. Sam Bennett, 22 shots on goal. Last week, it was the penalty minutes that impressed from Sam Bennett with his new team. This week, 22 shots on goal. Also, his 6 points, he was +5. We still have that, unfortunately. I don't know anybody that wants plus-minus anymore. And he had 11 hits. So Sam Bennett, and we saw Sam Bennett, if you watched him in the playoffs in the past, he's a guy built for the playoffs. So we'll see what happens down there. And Mackenzie Weegar, 7 points, 9 hits, 5 takeaways for the Blue Liners. So some impressive stuff in that regard. As we continue on, we see the Gators, Jakob Markstrom. Flames getting back into things, maybe? Well, 3-1 was the pipe man with 100 saves, just 7 goals against in 4 games this week, earning him 19.5 fantasy points for the Gators. Ryan O'Reilly, maybe rounding into that playoff form again as the Blues fight for a playoff spot. 8 points for O'Reilly, a couple of on the power play. He had 9 shots, and he also had 6 takeaways as well. And Sam Reinhart, a 7-point week, 20 shots on goal. Some about the Sams this week, firing on all cylinders, 4 power play points. And Reinhart also had a takeaway as well. All right, let's move on now to the top 5 shutout leaders in the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League. And I always try and look at the league leaders in the different categories that we're doing, as also it relates to the overall top 5 goaltenders as well. So there's the top 5 shutout leaders in the UFHL. Semyon Varlamov with 6, and then there's 3 guys, Marc-Andre Fleury, Philip Grubauer, and Andrei Vasilevsky, tied with 5 shutouts. John Gibson is on there, but there's 2 other goaltenders that are actually tied with John Gibson for shutouts. And unfortunately, the Fantrax system. There we go. There are 3 other goalies that are tied with. Actually, there's way more than 3. Sorry, Ilya Sorokin, Mike Smith, Alex Nedeljkovic, Peter Mrazek, Jacob Markstrom, who we just talked about, Anton Hudobin, and John Gibson all have 3 shutouts. So there's quite a lengthy list. But when you just look at the overall fantasy points, so Semyon Varlamov has the most shutouts, but he's on the outside of the top 5, just barely when you're looking at it. Connor Hellebuck, really strong season in the early going, has struggled as of late. He is number 5 in goaltending. Tristan Jarry, there's a guy who struggled quite a bit throughout the season. He's snuck into the top 4 overall, but not on this shutout screen. So the guys who are on this shutout screen that are in the top 5, Vasilevsky and Philip Grubauer. That's it when it comes to shutouts. Vasilevsky leading the way, and he's on this list with 5 shutouts. Marc-Andre Fleury is right behind him. It's a big gap. Kevin Lankinen was there at some point. He's dropped to number 8. But Fleury is number 2 when it comes to shutouts. He's also number 2 when it comes to the top goaltenders. And then you have Philip Grubauer. Actually, there's 3 of the top 5 that are on this list. So it's a tight bunch. There's a massive gap. There's no question that Andrei Vasilevsky is the number 1 goaltender in the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League. It's almost an 80-point lead for Vasilevsky over Marc-Andre Fleury. And then it gets really, really, really tight after that, just like it is for the top 5 shutout leaders in the UFHL. All right, let's now check out the top 10. And man, oh man, here I want to hear from everybody who thought Red Army was going to fall out of first place. That's the amount of people that want to keep plus minus. All right, so the Ice Vikings, we should have some sort of bell that we're ringing right now to recognize a changing of the guard at the very top, because man, that is well, maybe this is appropriate because it could mean a lot of this. So the Ice Vikings overtake Red Army. Red Army is number 2. The Titans are number 3. The Outlaws right now sitting in fourth place, as they jump ahead of the Royals. Royals drop to number 5. Rock Republic stays at number 6. The Yetis move up a spot into number 7. The Stingrays drop a spot. And the Gators. The Gators were 12th a couple of weeks ago. Now they're inching closer in the top 10 to the Stingrays. It's going to be quite a leap to catch the Stingrays. And as you're going to hear about some games played, games remaining issues in not just the UFHL, but the NHL, obviously. But man, oh man, some movement in the top 10. So very, very cool. And we will take a look at the actual top 10 standings, and you will see just how tight things have become as the Ice Vikings now open up a 44.15 lead, and then now the Titans, they're right on the heels of Red Army. And you're going to find out why a lot of this has happened as we dive into our UFHL Insider with Larry Fisher now.
Time to get the scoop on the UFHL with our insider, Larry Fisher. He's had lines in the water all week long. What will he reel in for us today? Let's dive in and find out what's going on with the UFHL now.
As I bring in the UFHL Insider, Larry Fisher, man, it has been quite the week in the UFHL. Some movement in the standings, certainly in the top 10 standings at the top, and playoff races are tightening up, Larry.
Yeah, we couldn't have asked for a much better first full season of the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League, Dean. You look at the race for first, we've talked lots that we didn't think anybody would catch Red Army. Well, not only have Ice Vikings caught Red Army, they've surpassed Red Army, and they've built on their lead every night since passing Red Army. So that's a huge development. Titans are hot on the heels of Red Army now for second place. And throughout the top 10, there's been every night, there's almost been a flip-flop, whether it's the Gators and the Grizzlies battling for ninth, up and down the standings. There's been a lot of movement. And you mentioned it too, that we have a playoff race, which is great to see in the Gretzky division. Last week, we touched on the Godfathers and said, it's time to put some respect on the Godfathers name. And look at the Godfathers now. They've closed to within, it's closer than 35 points of the Stallions for the final playoff spot in the Gretzky division, which is the only division that really has a playoff race. Kamikaze about a little over 100 points behind Strong Island in the Orr division. So theoretically, they could make that ground up. But the real playoff race to watch is the Godfathers closing the gap on the Stallions, and the fact that the Generals have had a couple big nights in a row and could make that a 3-horse race yet. But the real 3-horse race, the real suspense is right at the top of the standings with the big three, the Ice Vikings now in first place, Red Army in second place, and the Titans in third place. That's going to be a super intense last 2 weeks of the NHL and UFHL regular season.
It sure is. And I was one of those people on this show all season saying that I do not think Red Army will be caught and the gap would get smaller and then Red Army would have a big night. And I wonder, is it, lack of moves? Is it other teams making moves? Or is it just guys not in the lineup that has allowed Red Army to slip to 2?
Yeah, I think more than anything, it's at least for this week, anything that could go wrong or everything that could go wrong has gone wrong for Red Army. They lost their big ringer, their big acquisition this season was Mikko Rantanen, and he's been sidelined by COVID throughout this week. He's expected to return tonight, so that would give Red Army obviously a big boost, getting one member of Colorado's big three back. So Rantanen would be a big boost, but you look up and down the roster and guys are dropping off. Jonathan Drouin takes a personal leave of absence out of left field. Not that he was overly productive for Red Army, but, a number of man games lost there and a fairly prominent player. And then you just kind of go down the list. They lost Carter Hart to a season-ending MCL sprain. He's got a knee injury. Adam Boqvist breaks his wrist, so you lose a young Chicago defenseman. John Carlson didn't play last night, sidelined by a lower body injury, and Nick Foligno didn't play last night. They just rested him. It was a maintenance day, or he was scratched as a maintenance day. So you got a handful of guys out of the lineup, and then Igor Shesterkin, who we've been talking about on the show as the savior for Red Army, and especially with Carter Hart now out for the season, Igor Shesterkin's the man, and he was the shutout king last week. He had a couple shutouts and was the reason Red Army had stretched that lead. Well, last night he got shut out. The Islanders beat the Rangers 4-0. So Luc Grenier and the silent partner, you have to wonder if the hockey gods are turning on them a bit when you look up and down that roster and you see a half dozen players that are fairly key contributors for Red Army are out of the lineup. And as you said, full props to Ice Vikings and Titans. They haven't skipped a beat. They're mostly healthy, and the guys they've added between the trade deadline and stuff are all producing. And now it's looking like, Red Army's going to have their work cut out to to finish first, where, you know, over the last 2 months, Red Army's kind of been a staple at the top of the standings. And now here we are in the final 2 weeks, and we have a legitimate race for the Founders Trophy as the regular season champion in the UFHL.
It's like, Red Army owner Luke Grenier / George Steinbrenner, let a black cat walk in front of him. Or it's like that, remember that Simpsons episode where Silent Bob just keeps stepping on rakes the whole time? It's like everywhere Luke turns, an injured player pops up. So, man, oh man, that's, they're not going to slip to 19th. We know that. We know Red Army will not slip to 19th. But, who knows what happens down the stretch? This whole games remaining thing is such a big factor. A lot of my leagues that I played in the past have been head-to-head, and a lot of people have gone to head-to-head. In a points league, games remaining are huge down the stretch.
They are, and that was one area where, as of a week ago, actually Leanna, the special assistant to the general manager for Red Army, reached out, and she had compiled the games remaining for this show to have us announce how many games were remaining, and it looked very favorable for Red Army. The way it was working out, Red Army would have had 147 games left as of tonight. The Titans, would have had 138, and the Ice Vikings would have had 134. So it was looking promising that Red Army had the most games remaining, and although Ice Vikings were closing at that time or pulling ahead now, that Red Army would be able to make that up with their extra games. But you take off Jonathan Drouin's 9 games, and all of a sudden Red Army and Titans both have 138 games, and Ice Vikings have 134 games. And then when you factor in all these injuries that are starting to pile up and take off games played, Red Army might have the least games remaining in the big picture. So I think it's a tough one. And you mentioned the number 19, Dean, and there's actually 19 playing days left as of tonight, believe it or not. There's no game scheduled for May 17th. The NHL regular season is scheduled to end on May 19th as well. So 19 days left, ending on May 19th. So a lot of number 19 there. And we all know, as you alluded to, the number 19 has been synonymous with Red Army and Luke Grenier from the preseason power rankings. So we'll see if the number 19 that we're talking about with days remaining and the season technically ending on May 19th, whether that's a bad omen or whether that'll prove to be good luck for Luke Grenier and the Red Army franchise down the stretch.
Yeah, hopefully it's just not more rakes that they're stepping on every time they turn around. Now, when we talk about games remaining, not just for that big 3 race for the Founders Trophy, but for a lot of teams, there's a lot of mystery right now. We know what happened to the Canucks, the amount of games that they have to play. There's been talk about divisions. Regular season games being played on the same night as playoffs. How is that going to impact games remaining?
So there's a lot of speculation about the playoffs in other divisions starting before the regular season wraps up in the Canadian division. But the latest rumor is maybe they'll cancel the remainder of the Canadian division or North Division games beyond May 13th, which is when the other divisions end. So May 13th to May 19th, those games potentially being canceled if and only if there are no playoff implications. So the way it would work is if Winnipeg can't catch Toronto for first place, then there's probably no reason Winnipeg and Toronto have to play one extra game. If Calgary and Vancouver can't catch Montreal for the final playoff spot in the North Division, I don't think they need to play out the string as far as Vancouver and Calgary play 3 straight nights between, I think, the 16th, 17th, and 19th. And there's an Edmonton-Vancouver game in there. I believe there's another Calgary-Vancouver game as well. So you look at the games that would be played there. If they're going to be meaningless in the standings in the NHL, they might be canceled. But obviously, if they cancel those games, that's huge implications in the UFHL for the franchises that own several Vancouver players or players from North Division NHL teams that wouldn't get to make up those games that were otherwise expecting to make up the COVID games. So it's got some pretty serious implications if it comes to that, but sounds like there's been a motion, whether it was by Sportsnet or potentially surrounding the TV type situation with getting the playoffs done before the Olympics. That's a big thing with NBC. And I think being able to start the playoffs on a Friday or Saturday, the 13th would allow them to start that weekend already. So I think it's going to be interesting how this plays out, but technically we could be 2 weeks away from the end of the regular season last night already. So it's going to be a lot of behind the scenes negotiating to see whether or not those games are played for the North Division. And really it's going to come down to the standings, I think, whether or not they're meaningful games beyond May 13th. But if they're canceled, obviously, unfortunately for UFHL franchises, you'd be out that many games. And Luc Grenier, again, not to circle back to Red Army, but they're one of the franchises. He's looking at that games remaining race and crunching the numbers. You look at Ice Vikings, their only player left would be Zach McEwen. The Titans would have nobody left in those last Calgary-Vancouver games. And Red Army would also have one player left, but it'd be Quinn Hughes. So that's a pretty big player that could possibly make up, 10, 15, 20 points if he gets those 4 extra games. So it could be more bad luck for Red Army coming, depending on maybe the schedule makers conspiring against Red Army as well. But something everybody needs to be aware of is that it's a tentative schedule right now, and it's subject to change as far as games remaining go between May 13th and May 19th.
Yeah, obviously, if you have Canadian players on your roster, you could be have implications because of that Canadian division, and just more rakes for Red Army to step on as they try to get back to first place. All right, the trade deadline is over, but there are rumblings about some players still. There's still conversations that are going on. Things that I talk to different people about during the season. You can still talk to them about. In fact, you can even have a deal in principle. It just doesn't get announced. So there are still players being discussed right now.
There are, and one player in particular whose names come up and come to my attention is TJ Oshie of the Outlaws. TJ Oshie is obviously a valuable top 6 type player. I know the Seattle Kraken have a lot of interest in TJ Oshie because he's from Washington State and he'd be kind of a homecoming, but perhaps the Bentley Jacks as well. And the way the Outlaws are looking at their protected list, and a lot of these players' names that are surfacing now are expansion draft implications, right? Players that might not be protected. Where could we, how could they play out between now and that July 17th deadline for protected lists? And basically talking with Nick Utley, the GM of the Outlaws, he said that there will likely be a highest bidder, bidding war for TJ Oshie on the trade block following the season, because as of now, they would protect a player like Andrew Kopp, who has a better contract, better cap hit, over TJ Oshie. So TJ Oshie is going to be one of those names that's available. And I think a lot of franchises that have open forward spots on their protected list, or TJ Oshie be an upgrade for a lot of franchises, there will be interest in TJ Oshie before he gets to the expansion draft. And the Bentley Jacks, I mean, they may be willing to make a side deal as well to kind of have that face of the franchise type guy in TJ Oshie, who it could be a cool crossover if Seattle does get TJ Oshie, if Washington doesn't protect him, and then the Bentley Jacks get him in the UFHL. But TJ Oshie's name is officially out there, and I think GM Nick Utley kind of wanted to throw that name out there and get a bit of a bidding war, get some interest going, and see what kind of offers will come in between now and July 17th for TJ Oshie. But I don't expect he'll be exposed by the Outlaws. I expect he'll be moved between now and the deadline for submitting protected lists.
Well, in the National Hockey League today, the Seattle Kraken made their final payment on an expansion franchise and officially are members of the National Hockey League. And, it wasn't an expansion sale, but there was a franchise sale this week that closed in the UFHL.
There was, and not quite to the degree of the Seattle Kraken. $650 million US dollars was their expansion fee, but the Elite Assassins have sold for the second time since November, and they're sold to the Five Eyes Entertainment Group, which consists of Jeremy Latta, Nolan Reinhardt as sort of the co-owners, as GM, assistant GM, and then Trevor Zimmer is their director of scouting and player development, who actually has been working in the UFF Sports with Five Eyes Scouting Services, but they purchased the franchise for a total of $4,750 USD. They initially purchased 50% for $2,750 on April 10th, which included full control of hockey operations as former GM Harrison Miller stepped down to focus on scouting and actually joined Red Army in a player development role. But Five Eyes Entertainment Group, persisted, and they wanted the full franchise if possible, and they came to a deal on April 24th that they could acquire the remaining 50% from Elaine Harrison for 2,000 USD additional. So total sale price was 4,750 USD for the Elite Assassins. And the Five Eyes Entertainment Group, I can tell you, Dean, is they're treating this very professionally. They're a very good group of guys taking this serious, and they issued a statement, and I'll read it, but obviously a very professional organization, another one to join the UFF Sports and the UFHL. But Jeremy Latta submitted this on behalf of the Five Eyes Entertainment Group. He said, after joining UFF Sports in the form of Five Eyes Scouting Services, our group was able to see firsthand the innovation and the sheer potential that exists in the UFF Sports ecosystem. The ability to be part of something special and to be a productive and positive force in the growth of the UFHL and UFF Sports as a whole was an opportunity we could not pass up, and we were thrilled when provided the chance to become sole owners of this storied franchise. So obviously, and then he goes on to say, as we look to the future, our management team will evaluate our respective rosters and work tirelessly to ensure the product we place on the ice will not only be competitive, but a perennial powerhouse in the UFHL. We understand that to achieve our goals, our team will need to be active in every medium available to us, from the entry auction to the phone lines, but are confident in our ability to not only survive, but to thrive. In the short term, we have a number of selections in this year's entry auction and plan to be very active in the days and weeks leading up to the draft. So I know they're eager to add some star power and really sort of put their stamp on that roster too, considering the trade deadline was passed when they officially took control of hockey operations and have sort of got to put their stamp on it. And for Elaine Harrison, she was able to triple her investment because she purchased the Elite Assassins from Jason Hofer in early November, just prior to the season starting in January. And she paid 2,000 Canadian dollars, which was 1,535 USD. So to get 4,750 USD was essentially tripling her investment in a matter of 7 months. So that just goes to show how fast this platform is growing and evolving, and the kind of serious high stakes fantasy players that are getting involved with Five Eyes Entertainment Group, among other groups that have joined in the last 6 months.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just talking to Hernan Salas the other day, the former owner of what was the Chilean sea bass, and how I said, hey, you did pretty well getting in and making some money. I said, there's some things on the way that may make you want to rethink doing that, but you still did make some good money, and that's what people have done. Is for Hernan, it was a case where he just realized it was going to be too much for him, and he made a profit, and now somebody else has a franchise. So there's lots of different reasons for people to get into UFF Sports, and to each their own. And if you make some money and you can stay in the game in another format, all the better. Now we had we had a mid-season meeting, and first of all, before we get into the details, I thought the turnout was really impressive, and I was impressed with how many people could make it out. And for those that couldn't make it, some joined halfway through, and then others could watch it. But very impressive to see that as many franchises are taking this as serious as they need to.
I think that was a big takeaway, Dean, was the professionalism. The people set up in their offices, and I think we had at one point there was over 30 attendees in the mid-season meeting on a Sunday afternoon. It was about a 4-hour meeting, and yeah, we had over 30 attendees at one point, including some scouts that were listening in because there was a scout presentation as well. And there will be a follow-up as far as voting on entry fees and some of the other topics that came up that may require voting prior to next season and prior to August, but certainly there'll be some follow up with the minutes, and it was recorded, so there'll be a recording sent out. But you're right, the representation and just the professionalism of the turnout was impressive, and was our best meeting yet as far as turnout goes. So we were very excited to see that, and there was obviously some big announcements as part of that meeting as well. But it was a fun meeting, and I think everybody came away learning a lot and feeling confident about the direction of UFF Sports.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I thought everything that that was presented from Tony's presentation to the scouts went over well. People can take the information, digest it, and make some really informed decisions moving forward. And one of those changes that could develop out of everything that's happening is that possibly we may move to a more traditional draft as opposed to the auction. A lot of things have to sort itself out, but that was one thing that did come out of this, that's a possibility.
And there's a lot of support for that. A lot of franchises they weren't thrilled about the entry auction being if you finish in the bottom 5, you're in a bidding war with 5 other franchises for first overall, and you have to essentially buy your prospects, your top prospects to build through the draft. You got to pony up the money to invest in those prospects. And a lot of people didn't love that, but also there were other franchises who enjoyed the bidding wars and who enjoyed being able to acquire a pick anywhere in the bottom 5 and have a chance at first overall, whether that's, Owen Power this year or Shane Wright in 2022 or Connor Bedard in 2023. And a lot of those draft picks have already moved that are, again, they're 2-3 years away, and those franchises could make a lot of roster changes and no longer be in the bottom 5, as we've seen with Dynasty this year, right? I know we talked about Xavier and Brian there, but they were pegged as a bottom 5 franchise, and now they're middle of the pack, and those picks were devalued and weren't worth what people thought they'd be worth. But looking ahead, there, Red Army's another one of those franchises, but there are a number of franchises, both rebuilding franchises that traded away their picks in 2022 and 2023 that likely would have held on to them if they knew they could build through the draft. And then franchises like Red Army who enjoy spending on prospects and being part of the auction and part of the bidding war and the suspense that comes with that. They went out and acquired a number of picks in that, what they perceive to be franchises that'll still be in the bottom 5 in 2022 and 2023. With the intent of, as long as it's a bottom 5 pick, I'm going to have a chance to bid on first overall. So from both sides, I'm getting the feedback that maybe it would be best to keep it an auction for 2022 and 2023 and transition to a traditional draft in 2024. So everybody will get their 2024 draft picks on July 26th this summer. And then if we know that it's transitioning to a traditional draft, the rebuilders wouldn't trade away their picks if they want to draft and develop for free without having the fees and the bidding wars. And then also the other franchises that want to, get close to the top, they would wait until the draft arrives to trade up, because they wouldn't trade years in advance thinking as long as it's anywhere in the bottom 5, I'll have a chance to bid on first overall. They would wait right until the draft order was finalized and then make their move for a specific pick. So I think both sides, the feedback I'm getting is that maybe kick that ball down the road to 2024 as far as transitioning to a more traditional draft without the bidding wars and the cost involved. But certainly I think that's the direction it will eventually go. And I think it makes sense that, especially for rebuilding franchises that maybe don't have a lot of revenue coming in, that they could, much like the NHL, they could build around some star players and grow their way up without having the big upfront expense.
Yeah, and this, I think this is really, really exciting. Not that I didn't enjoy the auctions, even though I got outbid for some players, I did win. And, watching Trish bid on Shane Wright that day was great. And who knows how that happened, changes or whatever. But what I'm saying is I did love the auctions. And, I'm saying this as a person who has a really good chance of getting Shane Wright next year, because we wouldn't be outbid for Shane Wright because my wife's scouting agency owns him. So we share the same bank account. So as I say this, know that I'm saying I will not be outbid for Shane Wright if there is a bidding situation and we're in the top 5. But I think we should go to 22 instantly to a traditional draft system. I think it makes draft picks infinitely more valuable. Because people, there's a lot of people that said, why am I bidding in the draft? I'll just get that player for 2 picks later and this, that. Well, you wouldn't from our team, but I think it just is so realistic. So I think for the better of the league, for the more realistic, I would be voting for 2022. And I say that having, laid out my plan of never getting outbid for Shane Wright for when he comes, if he is in the auction and we're in that top 5 bubble. So, again, it'll be a decision that we'll have to make moving forward. But another aspect of realism if we eventually go to the traditional draft, just from this owner's perspective, who would have a better chance of getting Shane Wright in an auction next year. But I still think we should go for the betterment of the league to a draft setup.
It definitely increases the value of draft picks. The only feedback I got about that was a lot of franchises that are projected to be bottom 10 franchises next season were eager to trade away their draft. They don't have those draft picks. They've already traded them to franchises that were willing to spend on them. So a lot of people are saying, okay, well, give us all our picks back and then go to a traditional draft, and we're all for it. So a lot of the franchises that would benefit most from that have already traded those picks, and that's why there's been a bit of pushback. But I agree. I think the value of draft picks goes up immensely if it's a set spot and you're locked in the draft order and you're getting that player for free. And then some people said, well, why not keep it in auction? But instead of that, right now it would be 90% goes to the scout who owns the prospect, 5% to the prize pool, and 5% to platform development. What if the 90% went to the prize pool and keep it in auction format? And that would obviously drive the prize pool up. But again, everybody's sort of, bringing up ideas in their own best interests, right? So,
yeah.
But yeah, there are a lot of ideas on how to proceed with whether it stays the entry auction or moves to a traditional draft. And I would say, surprisingly to me, almost, it's probably as far as the DMs on Telegram and stuff, it's probably the talking point that's getting the most attention out of the mid-season owners meeting.
It's interesting. Here's some advice for people coming up with an idea. Look at that idea and say, does this benefit me the most, or does this benefit the league the most? Think for the league. Let's not be selfish on this. We hope this league is going to be here for a long time. Think for the betterment of the league instead of the short term of your franchise. That's my advice for everybody. But hey, you're the guy with insider advice on the show. Why am I giving out the advice? What do you got for insider advice?
Yeah, we got a couple good items this week, Dean, and then I think this one's no surprise to anybody, but it's time to start buying some SCO. Tomorrow, the private sale starts. Obviously, all the franchise owners, scouts, and GMs had an opportunity to participate in a pre-private sale where there was 1 million score coins or score tokens allocated for early adopters. So hopefully everybody listening has already placed their order for those. If you didn't, that deadline's now passed. So you have to participate in the private sale starting tomorrow, Saturday, May 1st at 2 p.m. Eastern. And going forward, starting tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern, the only way to make a transaction on the platform, the only way to pay your entry fee, the only way to receive your prize pool payouts is going to be in Scorecoin. There will be no more fiat changing hands at all, no more e-transfers or off-chain stuff. So everybody's known this day's been coming for a long time. It was actually, the original timeline was Halloween back in October. So you've had an extra 6 months to prepare for this. Hopefully everybody now has a crypto wallet, has Zil, and can transfer their Zil into their UFFS wallet and has some Scorecoin there and buys more Scorecoin because it's the currency of the platform. And if you want to make trades, you want to buy some prospects from a scout, anything like that, you're going to need Scorecoin and you're going to need Zilliqa going forward. So this is sort of your final reminder that tomorrow is the big day. Everything's on the platform tomorrow. No more off-chain stuff. So if you want to make any moves going forward, you're going to need Score and Zil in your wallet. So get that done ASAP.
You know what I've loved the last, week or 2 weeks is the amount of new people flooding into Telegram. And, I feel for Andrea and Tony and Liz and everybody that is in these Telegrams because they're repeating themselves, but in such a good way because so many people are wanting information about everything going on. And one of the coolest things I think I like is somebody comes in, and it just happened the other day. How do I buy a team? How do I do this? I want to buy a team right now. Well, they're in luck because, technically teams are always for sale on the marketplace, are they not?
They are. So if they go to franchises, so if you go to hockey.uffsports.com, only the ice hockey franchises are available right now. But you click on franchises, scroll to the bottom of their roster, and you can put a bid in on any franchise that you want at any time. And that current franchise owner will have the opportunity to accept or reject your offer. But also for the franchise owners now, they can go to their roster, scroll to the bottom to that same bid section, and they can put their franchise up for sale. They can put an asking price, a list price, and there is a marketplace for franchises for sale. And I think we will see some franchises go up on the marketplace. Obviously, the Blizzard's been entertaining offers for about a month now since the expansion franchise, the UFHL expansion franchise, sold via auction for $10,000 USD. That sort of set the new benchmark. But certainly under Marketplace, you can go to franchises for sale, and starting Saturday, there, as soon as everybody else, the public and the private sale has access to, they'll have access to the Scorecoin. And once you have Scorecoin, you can bid on a franchise, and there will be franchises listed on this page. I'm guessing the Blizzard will end up there. I don't know what Dylan Wheaton is going to put a price tag on there, but certainly there'll be some franchises going up for sale on the franchises for sale marketplace, as well as if you click franchises as a fan, as long as you're registered as a fan, you can scroll to the bottom of every franchise page and submit a bid. And obviously that'll be either accepted or rejected, but every franchise is always for sale. So find a roster you like, a logo you like, and go ahead and submit an offer, and we'll see how many franchises turn over between now and next season.
And, something that we talked about in past episodes is tokenizing franchises. So whether, if you can't afford a full franchise, possibly of buying, portions, there's so many things, while this is a club that, is full of exclusivity because there's only 32 owners, you can get in so many different ways. You can try to be a GM. You could be a scout, as we said. You could try to be partial ownership, the amount of teams that have staffs. So just because there's only 32 franchises doesn't mean there's only 32 ways to get involved.
Yeah, and the tokenizing of franchises is coming, Dean. That's inevitable. I believe it's going to be 1,000 tokens per franchise, as opposed to 100. I believe we're going to do 1,000 tokens per franchise. So Duckman's Domination will have 1,000 tokens. As the 100% owner, Dean would own all 1,000 tokens of Duckman's, but he could sell off, as low as one or as high as, however many you want, right? So you'll be able to sell off percentages in order to bring shareholders on and really grow the investment side of UFF Sports to get more people involved and feeling like they have a stake in every franchise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we have percentages within our franchise. George Batchel gets his percentage. Craig Button gets his percentage. Craig also has his percentages worked out with Trish. He won't tell me what those are. I don't know if that's a negotiating tactic or not. But it's also a way for franchises to say, okay, you're doing this job, and this is this is your pay. You're getting a percentage of what we do. So the better you do your job, the more percentage your more payout your pay percentage is going to be.
Yeah, it's a great way to reward the people that are in your organization, and certainly a way to generate capital, generate an operating budget for your organization. You could always if entry fees go up by $1,000 or heaven forbid $3,000 or whatever it may be. If those franchises are tokenized, that's an easy way to generate the capital to put up the entry fee to have that operating budget. So. I know there's definitely different levels of ownership right now. There are already groups that have, a number of people investing significant money towards this platform and pooling their resources. And there are individual owners who are one-manning it on a mid-level income, right? Not a super high earner. So there's definitely different levels of ownership. And I think tokenizing the franchises allows the mid-level owners to stay involved and find ways to generate revenue.
Great stuff as always, Larry. We got a dynamite podcast coming this weekend with you and Darren, so I can't wait for that. Have a great weekend. Get some rest because it's going to be a busy one on Sunday.
Sounds good, Dean. Same to you.
This is UFHL Now with Dean Millard. Get in the game, where you own the game.
All right, lots going on in the UFHL as always. Even for non-playoff teams, you're watching for what what players will be taken in the playoff draft, and then you get some income from that. There's the expansion draft talks, as you heard in the UFHL Insider segment, still going on with teams, and then there's the private sale for the Scorecoin, the public sale coming up. There is absolutely so much going on that it is quite amazing to be a part of it. And kudos to the founders for putting all this together, and kudos to all of you out there, owners, GMs, scouts, whatever you are in this process. We all thank you for helping us build it to be something that is spectacular. Okay, we have a lot going on, not just with this show in the UFHL, but with other sports and other things as well. Of course, there is the brand new UFFsports.com website. You can register as a fan, scout, staff member, or an owner. You can also check out our schedule on UFSN. Big podcast this Sunday. Fantasy Hockey Time. Final episode on Monday. Then we'll move to a new show. 2-Minute Tuesdays with Darren Bates. Of course, tracking the draft with myself and Craig Button on Wednesdays. And this show, UFHL Now, and can all be found at our wonderful UFSN YouTube website. For Larry Fisher, I'm Dean Millard. Have yourself a great weekend in fantasy, everybody. We'll see you later.
UFHL Now is produced by DM Productions. To get in touch, head to www.podcastalley.ca.